Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good day, you're welcome to Pertinent Questions on Western Spring Television. My name is FEMI ADEFILA. Pertinent Question is a program where we ask questions that are pertinent about social, political, and economic affairs of Nigeria, Africa, and of course, the world as a whole. Today, welcome on Pertinent Question. My guest is someone who has been on this program before because there are pertinent questions to interrogate together. I have in the house someone who is an education entrepreneur and, of course, a publisher, Mr. EMMANUEL MONYE. Sir, you're welcome on the program.
Thank you, Femi.
It's good to see you.
Good to be here, too.
Let's start from the economy of the nation.
Okay.
First subsidy has been removed, and it's been done twice. The total sector is deregulated. Now, first sells for between 617 naira to 650 naira, depending on the station that you are patronizing. How does that come to you? How do you see that?
Well, I think I have to examine this question from two perspectives. You talked of fuel subsidy removal, and you talked of deregulation. And you talked of having adjusted the prices twice recently. In a deregulated economy, I don't think you have to adjust prices anyhow. What is happening is that the petroleum price, pump price has increased, whereas we have not actually deregulated. Otherwise, there's no point for NNPC being the one to adjust prices for us. In a deregulated economy, we expect that there should be the interplay of supply and demand. But when you have a sole supplier whose major shareholders is the federal government still regulating prices, it is not fuel subsidy removal, but an increase in the pump prices of petroleum products. But
I don't think the GMD of now privatized NNPC, we agree with you. The argument he put forward was that the sector is deregulated completely, and they were just responding to market forces. Don't forget that Saudi Arabia just retained about 1 million barrel per day, and that led to rise in the price of crude in the international market. And that if it affects the price of crude, definitely there must be consequential increment on the prices of fuel.
That is why you have a single supplier. When you have different suppliers sourcing their products from different sources, there might now be what you call a competition of prices. That will now convince me that it is actual deregulation. But NNPC is still the sole importer of petroleum products as we speak. So it is still the one determining at what prices it is bringing petroleum products in and at what prices it feels it has to sell. You can as well say allow modular refineries to operate and bring their own products to the supply chain and see how this will affect the prices in the general market. When you have supply from different sources, both local and international, and you have an interplay of prices, then we can now say that there is deregulation. But here you have a single supplier, it's a monopoly. It's a single supplier. NNPC PL is still owned by Ministry of Finance Incorporated.
Mr. MONYE, yeah. I understand that before now, 82, when General Muhammadu Buhari had sway as the president of Nigeria, NNP was the sole supplier. I think recently about 18 companies were licensed and given the power to also bring refined fuel into the nation. Are you sure that NNPC is the sole supplier as we speak?
As we speak, no other importer has brought in fuel into the Nigerian market.
But with the entrance of these 18 companies, do you believe that the regulation will function?
In theory, they have been allowed to come in. In theory, they have to source their foreign exchange from the I&E market. Where is the supply of the funds from which they are going to bring in their own products to compete with an NPC? Where are they going to get it from? And up till as we speak, I don't think I've only read that a particular company is going to bring 27 million liters of fuel this week, but we have not seen it. It is only when that comes into the market and we now have a competition that I will now agree.
Some have even argued that with the flotation of the naira by the CBN, that the fact that there are 18 more companies that will be competing for dollars from the open market, that will impact negatively on the strength of the naira, and of course, again, there will be increase in dollar value in the Nigerian system.
Definitely. The way out for us is not importation. No matter the number of importers we are going to have, the way out is for us to refine locally. So the CIF will be reduced. The cost insurance of freight of bringing in these particular products will be reduced, and will not be buying at international markets. There are so many marginal fields right now that most IOCs have abandoned. After abandoning them, we still have the local people who are refinery, who are called illegal bunkers, illegal refineries. But they have been filling their own gap within that space in which they operate. Whenever, if you are going to take a 200 milliliters of water and you are getting 170 and somebody is supplying 30 from other source, so far you have 200 milliliters of water being provided. So if you allow these illegal so-called refineries to continue to operate and they bring in their own to satisfy, even if it's just in Niger Delta, the demand for petroleum products from Niger Delta will be reduced. If it's reduced, then the quantity of fuel to be imported will also be reduced.
So without prejudice to the modular refinery story that you just spoke about now, the argument has been that government has no business in business, that we ran down these refineries because it was managed 100% by the Nigerian government, by the Nigerian state, that we should rather privatize. Do you subscribe to that theory, that the Nigerian government should sell off all these refineries? Article promised that Nigerian government has no business owning refineries, that we should privatize them and allow private concerns to take over these refineries so that we can have optimal utilization and make it profit-oriented. Do you subscribe to that?
You know, the refineries were privatized at a point, and the privatization was reversed by
Yaradua.
Yeah, President Yaradua. Why was this done? It is because we have very poor corporate governance in Nigeria. The Nigerian steel rolling mills, the steel rolling mills in Osogbo was privatized. Machine tools was privatized. What has happened to them? What most Nigerians do is that they do asset stripping. They sell off the assets of the companies that they buy, which they buy for peanuts, and then just strip the whole place and use them for something else. What I expected us to do is to allow people, especially modular refineries, those who don't have that capital outlay to invest in large-scale refinery, to go into that business. For the ones that we have today, I really believe that for now, we can only get the best we can get from the refineries is the scrap value of the refineries, because the technologies are already antiquated. It's just like having a Peugeot 404 today, and you say you are repairing it, and you want to privatize it. Nobody's going to buy it. It's going to buy it as an antiquity or for the scrap value. So what I think should happen is that we should sell off the refineries as it is, as they are today. Sell them off. If you have people who want to upgrade them, let them do so. If they want to asset strip, let them strip. But we should no longer be pumping billions of naira into companies that are not giving us any single.
But do you believe in the regulation? That it's important that we regulate the sector and allow market forces to come to play. I know everywhere in the world, even developed economies, they have one form of subsidy or interventions or the other. But in the Nigerian case, people have argued that Nigerian government should just deregulate the sector. Let's pay the going rate for fuel.
I am a very strong advocate of deregulation too. But the regulation in the proper sense of deregulation, not guided deregulation.
Absolute deregulation.
Absolute deregulation. Absolute deregulation that will allow for free entry, free exit of players. Not where you now do some selective selection of bidders who are going to import. Let everybody import. Let it be an all-commerce market.
Don't you think these are teething problems? Now we have the diesel is completely deregulated. Kerosene is deregulated. Prices at the time for diesel was going as high as 800 and something. Now we buy for 620 in Lagos, 800 and 580. That's the argument of government, that after some time, these pains will cease. And the balm of Gilead will come upon where we feel the pains today.
The fact that pains will cease does not mean that pains don't exist. The pains will exist, and people who are feeling the pains will cry. And we are crying today. 640 naira for diesel. Is it still economically wise enough? Is it not affecting productivity negatively?
Yeah.
Even to run this station, if you are going to go on diesel, you know what it means.
I'm on diesel. We are on diesel as we speak.
It's not good enough. 640 naira is not good enough. Because
but what do we do when the prices of this product are not determined solely within the Nigerian state? They are subject of international market forces.
Because we have made them subject of international forces.
Because the dollar is the currency.
If we consume what we produce, we will not be producing in dollars. If we insist that Nigerian producers must produce in naira, not some schools accepting dollars, even schools now accepting dollars, if you want to produce in Nigeria and pay our Nigerian engineers locally in naira, we will not have that pressure. If we produce here at home, if we consume what we produce, we will not be talking of international market.
And produce what we consume.
Yeah, produce what we consume. Saudi Arabia that we're mentioning is working well. In fact, they are benefiting from the increase in prices.
Yeah, they're making money.
They are making money. Why should we be making losses? Why?
Now, the government recently spoke about the need for palliatives. Governors met in Abuja and they come up with measures that they want to release to ensure that Nigerians enjoy the gains of subsidy removal. What suggestion will you make if you are locked in a room with the president or the governors today, the best way to ameliorate the pains so that people will feel the gains of subsidy removal?
You see, actually, I have tried as much as possible not to imagine myself being locked up with any of these people to determine what palliatives to be made. Because they are supposed to have done the thinking before removing the subsidy. You don't start thinking of how to ameliorate pain after you have deliberately rushed yourself into that accident. This is something they are supposed to have worked out. Number two, there's something that I noticed.
But don't forget, by June ending, which is last month, the budget provision made by the former president, there was no budget provision for subsidy removal.
And I also read that in the last 4 years, we have not actually paid any subsidy.
Yeah, we are doing so. Yeah.
Yes, we have not really paid any subsidy. That's the same thing. That's the same argument. And number two is that when you talk of people talking of palliatives, thinking of what to give us as palliatives, are they themselves ready to sacrifice? Look at the way the...
Are you talking of cost of governance?
The cost of governance. Look at the way the National Assembly passed the budget. Not a single dissenting voice from any opposition party member. You are allocating nearly 100 and something billion naira to go and buy yourselves cars and
70 billion.
70 billion, but they're also allocating another money for themselves. I mean, you are buying bulletproof cars from for the principal officers of the National Assembly, and you are asking those of us on the streets to go ahead and start enduring the pain.
So are you implying that the problem of Nigeria is not just about APC, but it's across political parties?
It's across political parties.
Labour, PDP, APC, NNPP.
It is across political parties, and the way our leaders emerge. They spend so much money to emerge. And you now realize that it's the person with the bigger pocket that controls the pockets, that controls Nigerians and determines what he or she wants. And when he comes in, he starts telling you what he wants and what he doesn't want.
So how do we now interrogate our leadership recruitment process so that we stop allowing people with deep pockets, the big boys, alone to attain political office?
We should now go back to our cultural systems.
Tell me about it.
Our cultural systems actually allow the system to source for quality people to represent them in the society. You just don't come from nowhere and say, I cannot come from Delta and say I want to become the Oba of Oshogbo, for example. It's not done.
They won't allow you.
They won't allow it. because there is a cultural way of recruiting others. I must come from a royal family. I must be identified by members of a royal family as their best representative, and they put me forth. That is what I expect us to be doing. Now, what we have in Nigeria is that instead of talking of legislators, we are talking of executives. Because most people who are legislators are also extensions of executives. They carry out constituency projects. Is that their business? It is not.
Well, Mr. Monye, talking about cultural leadership recruitment process and how flawless it is, recently the Oluwo was said, IFAs do no more play any role in appointment of others, government and money.
I'm not even talking of IFA too. I'm not talking of
What are you talking of?
Yes, I'm talking of the traditional way. I'm not talking of going to IFA. Every system, every society, I'm quite sure that at least in different societies, you look at people, see what they can offer, and then you tell them, please, can you contest for this? We have it even in our own social clubs. When you go out and headhunt, you tell people, oh, okay, I think you are going to be the next president of our society because we have seen what you have done for us.
Are you sure we still have that value? People say that money is what we respect and celebrate these days. People with deep pockets, the money bags, that they are dominating every sphere of our national life, politics, traditional institution, everywhere. That we throw money at problems. No more morals, no more values.
They are not wrong. We have gotten this far very badly that even students bribe their lecturers. Even students bribe their lecturers, so they are not wrong at all.
Sir, will you cut President Bola Ahmed Tinubu some slack? Because yesterday, NNPC announced that they will be paying 128 billion naira into the covers of the Federation account. This hasn't been done in the last 4 years. Again, what they have in Federation account now is about 1.9 trillion naira. If our state governors will be smiling to the bank this week, with about 980 billion naira. These are gains of first subsidy removal. Will you cut him some slack that he has freed the fund that will be no fund now for for infrastructural development of the nation?
What is the purchasing power parity of the extract funds? What is the exchange rate? When you exchange into the value, the naira value, I've always said it here that when I started working in the central bank, my annual salary was 1,370 naira per annum, which was around 14 naira a month. At the end of every 2 weeks, I was collecting 57 naira.
It was enough to take care of your needs. It was
enough to take care of everything I needed.
So it's about the quality of the naira, not the volume of the naira.
Because when the state governments get this money that everybody is shouting about, when they get the money, the cost of procurement will also have increased. That it makes no sense of that nominal increase in the money they are going to collect. And again, there's a question we have to ask ourselves. If the NNPC has remitted 123 billion naira, why were they able to remit it? Why were they not able to remit it in the past? These are questions as Nigerians we should be asking.
But they were doing swap. They were swapping crude for refined fuel.
Yes.
But now they are selling and they are making profit as an enterprise.
They are selling and they are making profit as an enterprise.
Yeah.
If they don't swap, what will they do? Are they not selling? Were they not selling before?
They were selling before.
Fine. The thing is that
during Jonathan they were selling, but this idea of swap came on board.
Yes, it's not even now. It's not new. We had counter trade in the days of President Buhari and Babangida. When Tam David West started the counter trade deal, that's why if you are not getting a buyer, you do exchange by barter. Yeah, it's not something new. It's not something that has not been done before. So I don't see it as a new innovation. 123 billion are now coming in. Something must be wrong somewhere. We know. It's just like when people say they are detecting 800.
So you don't believe now that we have so much fund that we can now use that?
What can we use the
to fix our system that is dislocated? That is dysfunctional.
How are you going to
the rules that are bad, the hospitals that are bad, the schools that are dilapidated?
When I was driving here now this morning, I saw that a road that was fixed not quite long ago has started developing potholes. Our procurement system is faulty. The contract award system is faulty. Do we get value for money? And even now, the timing of this release of funds to governors for me is very, very suspect. Most of the governors are first-time governors just coming in who need money in their various states. They are going to service the political leaders in their various states.
What should we do with the money?
The money.
What should we do?
Fine. I think what we should do with the money is that we should try and, on a national basis, try and revamp our rail system. The narrow gauge system, I've not seen any rail bringing in fuel, petrol into Oshobo. You pass through Freedom Park now, pass through Old Garage. You have not. It's a long time I heard the sound of the rail.
Mr. MONYE, hold your thoughts. When we return from this break, we'll continue where you stop. Yes, the program is Pertinent Question, and the questions we are interrogating is about the Nigerian state vis-a-vis first subsidy remover, and from where? From here to where? I see you after this break. Don't go anywhere. Thank you.
Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905. Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history. Ahmadu Bello, Prince Royal, was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate at the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness and participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. Mr. MONYE, you spoke before we went on break about your glorious days at the Central Bank of Nigeria when your salary was 57 naira and you lived quality life. With first subsidy removal, Nigerians are groaning, they are in pain, and they are yearning for salary increment. Labor is already interfacing, negotiating with government. What would you suggest should be the benchmark for government to reward labor, the public servant, the civil servant, so that they can at least get something that will take them home?
You see, my fear is that the money in circulation is going to increase without equivalent purchasing power. I had cause to discuss with my friends sometimes ago that the first car my dad bought for me when I went to serve, I sold it for 600 naira.
Wow.
It was a Peugeot 304. 600 naira. That means a liter of fuel today.
A whole car.
A whole
that
car.
You first owned in your life.
A whole car.
Even less than a liter of fuel today.
Less than a liter of fuel. As a youth copper, I was 180 naira a month. With 180 naira a month, I could afford to buy, in fact, a color TV in 6 months.
I bought my own car, 90,000 naira, 1993.
That was even too expensive. It was already
my salary was 900 naira as a youth copper.
That was too much. Okay, now is it the quantum
that matters?
That matters.
Or the quality?
Or the quality.
But how do we achieve that quality? Our external reserve today stands as about 40 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
We were doing far less than that. And World Bank just said that Nigerian economy is still the biggest on the continent of Africa, despite the fact that our debt burden is about 13 billion US dollars, and our service debt ratio to revenue is about 97%. In all this, how do we strengthen the naira without producing locally? Because Nigerians have this glutinous appetite for imported goods. And as long as we produce what we don't consume, and we consume what we don't produce, naira will continue to be on a free fall.
You see, even those days we were talking about, Peugeot was being produced in Nigeria.
Assembled.
At least was being assembled in Nigeria. And Volkswagen was being assembled in Nigeria.
Lagos, yeah.
Now, we have to import every car on the road today. Most of the cars. Even our president does not have a national car identity. That the car I'm riding today, like in India, where the Prime Minister said the car I'm riding is Indian made, can we have a president that can ride a Nigerian made car? The National Assembly members who are buying cars, are they buying Nigerian assembled cars? So how will our, and when we are talking of what we have in the foreign reserve,
yeah,
like somebody explained, it's like a bathtub. Coming in and going out. It drains, depending on the pressure on it. Now, if you have 40% something, it's not as if it's a stagnant thing. It depends on constant inflow and outflow.
That's right.
Now, if our outflow is determined by our propensity for imported goods, whereas we're not producing anything, even that inflow is coming from exporting in the crude form our resources, then something is wrong. And the World Bank has a way of deceiving us. We are still the largest economy. Largest economy in terms of absolute figures, or largest economy per capita.
And quality of life.
And quality of life. I mean, when...
Are you saying they're dressing us in borrowed robes? Or the African continent is in trouble? Because I read something last week, Mr. MONYE.
Yeah.
Apple, a single company in America, this year reached a threshold of $3.1 trillion in GDP. The all 54 nations in Africa, we are doing less than $3.3 trillion. Is that not a problem for the continent of Africa?
It is.
Because Ghana is in a mess. Kenya is in a mess. Everywhere you turn in Africa, Zambia.
Well, because Africans have refused to come out from being producers of raw materials to being producers of finished products. That is our problem. We are the fastest to consume. The latest car, the latest private jet will get to Nigeria in the next 6 weeks. But we cannot even manufacture the smallest bolt with which to repair those jets when they get spoiled. So how do we start comparing ourselves with them? The people who are involved with Apple in Nigeria only use it to defraud people. We are not challenging it positively. And I don't blame them too, because in those places, their basic needs have been taken care of by society. But the brilliant ones here who have that knowledge only want to use it to take care of their families and to get out of this poverty. So we can't continue to compare them.
Yeah, again, if you look at the Nigerian nation, and when we're having this conversation about how to re-engineer this nation, we speak more about the president and the federal government, and we talk less about the federating unit, local government, and state. And the bulk of the money we talk about will go into the pocket of governors. I mean, go into state treasuries. Do you think it's high time that state governors sit up and channel resources into meaningful ventures and channel resources into provision of basic infrastructural facility that will galvanize economy of state? Because federal government has no inch of land anywhere. Everywhere belongs to a state. We are a federated unit, a state, I beg your pardon. Do you think it's high time that we start to interrogate how governors expend resources if we are serious about development of this nation?
Our problem started in 1966 with the introduction of the unitary form of government. That is why everything is heaped on the president. When the military came in 1966, they came in with the military hierarchical structure, where the head of the military was the head of government at all levels. And it was his lieutenants what were deployed to govern the various regions that later on became states. So our thinking and blaming the president for everything is not accidental, and it's not our fault. It is the way our history has run. We see governors as appendages
of the
president.
And the Constitution doesn't say that.
The president, but again, you know, we mentioned something that we said we are having 1.9 trillion naira to be distributed, out of which 900 billion will be going to the states. Who determined the 1 trillion that will be retained?
That is going into a state infrastructural development fund.
I agree. But what I'm saying is that in a truly federal system, this should not happen. Even though we know the way Fashola and the other people took Jonathan to court, and Amici and Co took Jonathan to court, and what happened at that time. But it is still wrong.
But don't forget the fact that even in a federation, the central government has the power to manage the economy. Perhaps in their contemplation, they believe that if they push such quantum of money, such humongous amount of money into the circulation, it will depress the economy and even cause hyperinflation. That's why they said, in their wisdom or perhaps lack of it, that we can't afford to push this kind of fund.
Again, we have agreed on the same thing, that all our blame should be placed at the doorstep of the president. Because in their own wisdom. That's what you have just said. In their own wisdom.
In exercise of constitutional responsibility, managing the economy on behalf of the nation.
So if the economy goes wrong, the manager should be blamed.
That's right, definitely.
So if we're going to blame the manager, who happens to be the president, then we have to blame him. Because he determined what's come to the states.
Somebody told me something a long time ago that democracy as practiced today is the luxury of the West. That Africa, we didn't interrogate the concept of democracy before plunging into it, taking a dive into it, that we can evolve our own homegrown form of government, that an average person in Okefia does not care the form of government or the form of administration that he has. All he cares about is good governance. And that the two terms are not mutually inclusive, that are actually mutually exclusive. Good governance and democracy. Do you subscribe to that?
Yes. You see, again, there's something we call historical materialism in philosophy.
That's right.
When you talk of that, you see societies moving from the Stone Age to the slave trade era, to the feudal era, to the capitalist era, and to the socialist era. And what makes them move is the control of the factors of production at each stage of development. Africa, and Nigeria particularly, is still at the feudal stage of development, not even an advanced feudal stage of development, and we're already adopting things that are meant for capitalist systems. A capitalist system comes from the development of the military industrial complex, where factories have been so produce, have so advanced technological to a point where not a single worker controls everything in the chain of production. But the African society, you still have farmers who control everything in their chain of production, from buying the land, tilling the land, planting, harvesting, processing. But in a normal capitalist system, you have a worker who can only take charge of a particular segment in the division of labor. Let's assume you are assembling a phone. People will be assembling the microchip, some will be doing the back end. So you cannot go out and say you want to do it alone. So under that system of government, you have the capital system already developed to such an extent where the owners of the businesses control everything about the workers. And if they control everything about the workers, they have a right to now say this is what we want. And that is the capitalism that we are talking of. That's right. And that is why democracy that we have adopted is the pastime of the capitalist. The way you have defined it. Yeah. And that is why we are having that problem. We have a confusion of who we are. For example, right now, you still have people who own farmlands. The only thing we don't have now are serfs. The EWOFAs. What you don't have now are serfs. But you still have kings who will still tell you that we own that land, it belongs to our family. So we are still at that level of development. What I expect us to do is to go back to the parliamentary system of government, if it's still possible. If we're having a parliamentary system of government where you only present your own catchment area and you come to the top, you are easily elected from amongst your peers.
As part of the strategy of the central government to stem the tide of this crisis that the economy is witnessing, the pains that Nigerians are going through, the president has directed massive release of grains into the market so that food can be available. Is it a drop in the ocean or just a slap on the wrist? Do you see it as a tangible way to make food affordable and available?
Let us be honest with ourselves. We stay in Osun State. The only grain silo I knew was the Ministry of Agriculture. It has been sold and dismantled. Where are the strategic grain reserves of Osun being kept?
There's one in Elisha, I guess.
The one in Elisha, what is the size and how well will it take care of those who are here? Who has quantified the farm losses, on-farm losses of farmers post-harvest? Where have we been storing this excess? The excess we have here in the south that I know of is on the field, decaying. So what you are going to do is that you're going to get grains from the north. Because that is where the grains are. That is where you have the savanna farmland, where grasses grow. And that is where the grains will come from. Because grains come from grasses.
That's right.
So it means that we are going to provide them. I'm sorry, I'm going to go a little bit political again. That it is providing them with market for their grains that are there.
But we need the grains for survival.
How many people consume?
We need the millet, we need the corn, we need the yam, we need the rice, we need the beans.
Don't forget that our nutrition patterns are fashioned alongside our vegetations. Most people in Elisha that you mentioned now are pounded yam eaters.
Yeah.
They are not grain eaters. In fact, they will tell you in Ijesha land that it's the sick man that takes rice and grains. So who are you doing this things for? And even after you have released them, how are you going to replenish what you are going to put in your store?
I can't have you on this program, Mr. Monye, without asking this question, because I know you have a strong ties to Russia, or Soviet Union. The war in Ukraine is impacting negatively on the world economy. It's been on now, and there's no end in sight. And the world is suffering for what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. Don't you blame Putin for being a warmonger and plunging the world into this crisis?
You see, it's not a simple yes and no. It's not a simple yes and no. Because if we go back to the Bay of Pigs of Cuba, America did not allow Russia to put its missiles in Cuba. After the collapse of the Berlin Wall, there was an agreement between the East and the West. And don't forget that this Putin was then a KGB officer in East Germany as at the time this agreement was signed. That the West will not push its boundaries beyond particular areas of influence.
Further in the East.
Further in the East, but all the same, they have gone into Poland. Poland is next door neighbor to Russia. They are trying to go into Ukraine that has centuries of ties with Russia. There used to be three.
Is it America or NATO or by Ukraine? I mean, if Ukraine is an entity on its own, a sovereign nation, can it decide its fate, its destiny without recourse to Russia?
Was Cuba allowed to determine its fate without recourse to America?
That's a pertinent question.
Presidents, whether we like it or not, this world is a competition of ideologies and spheres of interest.
Or you call it an ego war between the big boys,
it could
Russia
be.
And America.
It could be. But the unfortunate thing is that they are not fighting in Alaska where they share a boundary. They have a boundary in Alaska. Why are they not fighting there?
Okay. Thank you so very much, Mr. Monye.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on Pertinent Questions.
Thank you.
Viewers, my guest has been Mr. EMMANUEL Monye, an education entrepreneur and publisher who has been answering questions on Pertinent Questions. Until next week, when I come your way again, or my other colleague, Mr. Smollett Alamu, on Pertinent Questions, my name is FEMI ADEFILA. See you next week. Bye for now.